Okay, so we've looked at how there were religious reasons for, how they use that as an argument, medical reasons. There's also a political economy of slavery. And this is an idea not simply based in 19th century US, but also in the ancient civilizations of Greece and Rome. And the key idea is that slavery was a prerequisite to a ruling elite within a democratic society. So slavery allowed the leaders of a society to avoid manual labor and devote time to affairs of the state. So if they weren't having to go out and work, then they could have time to sit around and talk about things, philosophize, be a philosopher, and just sit around and discuss. And of course, just the economic power of slavery is asserted and defended that they could produce more, they could make more money, and things like that. Edmund Ruffin, for example, in his 1853 essay, said he hit on some of the points that we just talked about, but he also added others. And he said, so long as domestic slavery is general in any country, and for the most part supplies the labor of the country, there is no possibility of the occurrence of the sufferings of the laboring class. The evils which are caused by extreme want and destitution, the competition for sustenance, class slavery of labor to capital, and lastly, pauper slavery, are all in the incidents and necessary results of free society and free labor. So those are some of the ways that the South defends slavery. The problem is when you look at people like Harriet Jacobs. Now, Harriet Jacobs, um, she was from North Carolina, and she's an author of a well-known work called Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. And this was published in 1861 under the name of Linda Brent. Her story is only one of many slave narratives that we have from that time period. But aspects of her life in the story reveals several things. It reveals how she was property passed along in a will from one person to another. She served as a house slave, placed more in contact with the family. Her master tried to persuade her to have sex with him, and when she didn't, he abused her. But the problem is not only does the master abuse her, but her master's wife also believed then that her husband was having sex with her, and so she was paranoid and abusive to Harriet also, and it fits in with those abolitionist ideas of slavery. So in hope of escaping that life, she made a decision to sleep with another white man, and she bore him 2 children. And both she and the children remained slaves. She was not freed, so therefore the slavery was based on the status of the mother, because oftentimes a father could be the slave master or a white man. So therefore slavery was always based, the status was always based on the mother status. So if she was a slave, then her children remained slaves also. So to continue to pressure her master, she sent her son to work on the plantation, and in effort to change all of this, she ran away. She actually survived for 7 years in a crawl space. She ran away in 1835, and she hid in the crawl space of her grandmother's attic until 1842. And when she escaped, she realized that she was not free. The only time she said she felt free was on a trip to England, while she was working as a nanny to a family who was traveling. Her freedom did finally come years later, but only when it was purchased for her in 1852. So there was a lot more to life in the antebellum South than slavery, yet at the same time, the influence and the power of that institution is not one that could easily be ignored. And as the defense of slavery began to turn into more of an offense in things like the Fugitive Slave Act and westward expansion, the troubles will continue. And the thing is, and we'll get into this a lot more next week whenever we look at the Wilmot Proviso and some of those things, and really leading up to the Civil War. But it is this defense that really does start causing problems. Things like the Fugitive Slave Act is whenever, you're looking at the North as being free, the South not, and you have a slave runaway. Okay, whose right does that infringe on more? Is it infringing on the North's right in in harboring a slave, or does it infringe on the South in losing a slave? So things like that are going to really start boiling up and starting to cause some problems. Guys, again, I want to encourage you, if you have any questions for me, please email me. If for some odd reason you don't hear from me when you email me, call me. All my information is listed on the syllabus. I keep my email up all day long for the most part, except for whenever I'm traveling, whether it's going to get my kids from school or whatever. I don't check my email then, obviously, because it's not safe. But aside from that, I typically have my email open all the time. If you have a question, please contact me. You can text me. You can, I'm not sure what's going on. I feel like we're having a breakdown on communication a little bit in this class. But please know you can always get a hold of me for questions. I do want to take a moment and talk about this document analysis thing. Some of you are really getting it because you're going back. I can tell you look at my comments that I leave every week. And you are really improving on those. But a lot of you are continuing to make the same mistakes over and over. And if you're not looking at my comments, you're not going to see what you need to do. But I do want to take a minute to just say, in the last section of that, in the how does it relate to class, what you need to be doing is thinking, okay, what I keep getting are summaries of the document. That's not what I'm looking for. That can go in the why was this document written. That's just kind of a summarizing, telling me what it is. But in that last part, this is how does it relate to class? What I want you to think about this week is, okay, we're talking about the big umbrella term for this week is the Slave South. That's it. I mean, if you go back and you look at the heading of your readings for this week, it's about the Slave South. I mean, that is the only thing you should be thinking when you're writing that last part. How does this connect? You need to be thinking, okay, Slave South. And connect it into all the ways. I mean, your book, even if you go through and you look at the subtitles in each section that's in bold, ask yourself, can this document be connected to the Cotton Kingdom in any way? Can this document be connected to the plantation economy? Can this document be connected to the let's see, what's another subheading here? To the masters and mistresses in the big house. Another thing that you can do is you can look at your key terms for the week. I mean, I put them right up here at the beginning of all these PowerPoints. Okay, can it relate to the Cotton Kingdom? And then put how. Can it relate to the slave codes? Put how it can do that. There's lots of ways that you can make these documents connect back to your readings this week without giving me a summary of those documents. So keep that in mind as you move forward on this.